Hi there. This is my reflection over Bridge to Terabithia. It won the Newbery Award. So I'm going to explain a quick summary of the story, and I'll explain a little bit after too. So the story is centered around Jess Aarons, and he's the main character. He lives with three sisters and then his parents, and he works a lot on the farm. Doesn't really have many friends. And experienced bullying in school. And then a new girl came to school named Leslie, and she actually lives close to Jess too. And in recess one day, she outruns him, and quickly he was like, "Yeah, I don't like her." Um, but after that, shortly, they actually both enjoyed each other in the long run. They started to hang out and adventure together, and they had one thing in common too, and they both were bullied, and even one of Jess's younger sisters was as well. So they all began a friendship through that, and they created their own imaginary world together where they could go to find peace and adventure, and without any of their enemies in their way. And that place was called Terabithia, and that is where we get the title of our story. So they spend a lot of their time there, and unfortunately, a while after they have created that friendship, Leslie was in Terabithia, and she unfortunately drowned in the creek, and Jess just was horrified and extremely sad, and was trying to process with the people around him. It was just really hard, and he made a special wreath in Terabithia to honor her. And he ended up growing in relationship with his family, especially his sister that was bullied. So that was mainly the story, and we see a lot of themes in it as well. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little about the illustrations. There were a couple, even though it is a chapter book, there were a few black and white pictures. It seems like it was almost in pencil. And although it was dark pictures and there weren't that many and they were small, I believe that they were really intense and they captured the character's feeling, and it really helped tell the story. So I'll move into my reflection on it and my response. And I just see a lot of themes in Bridge to Terabithia, such as friendship, sympathy, and peace and forgiveness. Just a lot. I think it's a hard read for students. I think it's full of a lot of emotions. I mean, it deals with bullying, and it even deals with a tragic death of a child, and that's hard. And I remember reading this as a child, and it did hit me. I mean, it's a story that I still remember to this day, and I read it again, and I was just like, wow. Yeah, and it just brings me back to when I was a child, and I did experience a lot of hurt from my friends, but also from my family. And it took a lot of time to process that. And I think we can see in the story, it took a lot for Jess to process what had happened between bullying and the loss of his friend. But all in all, he was able to reconcile with those relationships, and he was able to grow through the loss that he experienced in his past. So I'm excited to someday, hopefully, teach my students that, read this book with them, and teach them about all of those themes in there. And the one most I love is friendship. I just think it's really special. Even if you guys have your differences, there's also a lot of similarities that can bring friendships together. And maybe even you can create your own Terabithia together. The activity that I chose for my class is to build our own Terabithia. And we see in the book that the Terabithia was a very special place for the main characters. It was a place for them to be away from their enemies, to not be bullied, just to not be around sadness or the negative things in our world, but to really experience adventure, peace, and joy. So I would like my students to create their own, and I want them to be really creative and expressive with this. I want their personalities to come out, and I want to see what their imaginary world would be like if they could design it for themselves. I want them to use a lot of different resources like 3D art and whatever that looks like for them, and to not just use a pencil and a paper. I want to encourage my students to use as many resources as possible. And then I'd like to share it with the class. I wanted everyone to see each other's creations. So that is all for Bridget Terabithia.